It's those little things that keep me finding my way back to the Orange County line.
Welcome to the Y with Dr. T, and I have Dr. Keesler here with us from the IU School of Social Work. This is kind of our part 2 on adverse childhood experiences and why does that matter to community. So, in the first episode, we talked about adverse childhood experiences and how that related to Orange County. So, just a quick rundown. Southern Indiana Community Health Care, or SICHC, became interested in learning about and understanding adverse childhood experiences. It's a short version. And what we really found here when we looked at pregnant moms, and then we also looked at children 7th grade through 12th grade, and we found that basically 30% of the individuals surveyed reported a score of 4 or more, which that's kind of the in research, that's kind of the tipping point there. The national average right now is around 16%. So we were about double the national average. That kind of got us thinking, okay, so how does adverse childhood experiences really affect a community's well-being, health and well-being, and all the ways that it potentially could, and then what as a health clinic do we do about it? So that's where I want to kind of focus, because this is your academic area, and so I'll kind of push it to you. What do you think?
To some degree, it's my academic area. You know, so I would like to take a step back, and maybe listeners have already heard this, but I think it's important to talk about what are adverse childhood
Sure.
experiences, just briefly.
Mhm.
So in 1998, we know that a study was published, and doctors were looking at why their patients weren't getting better. And I think that that's relevant to some things you've already talked about, with SICHC, but why were their patients not getting better? And they identified 10 types of adversity that happened before the age of 18, so during childhood. And those were in 2 areas: household dysfunction, so things like parental or caregiver divorce or separation, incarceration of an immediate household member, substance use, mental illness, etc., and then also child abuse and neglect. So common things that we think of as physical abuse, psychological abuse, sexual abuse, emotional neglect, not feeling loved, and physical neglect, not having your basic needs met. And so they realized that these were impactful and they were predictive of poor outcomes later in life. We know that those 10 types of adversity are not all encompassing. We know now that we have to look beyond that. But in 98, that was a huge step forward. We hadn't been looking at that. We thought abuse and neglect were really rare. And the fact is, they're not. Adversity is really a common part of life. Doesn't mean we have to tolerate it, doesn't mean it has to be that way. It just is at that point in time. Um, but we've grown so much since then, and realizing that we need to be concerned not just about childhood and the childhood household, but also community. What's going on in the community? Looking at culture, things that have happened within certain ethnic groups, and also climate. Climate change and is, whether or not you believe in it, we know that there's a lot of storms, there's a lot of forest fires and mudslides and tornadoes and etc. These are all about stress,
Right.
and they change you. And I think that that's important to realize, is that for so long when we talked about childhood abuse or neglect, it was, oh, it's over with, it's done with.
Yeah.
No, no, it's not. Just like the story of Orange County isn't done and over with yet since
Right.
the ACE study in 2018 through 20 or whenever that was. It's not done. The event itself may be over with, but its impact on the body is what we need to be mindful of, that level of stress.
Right.
So when we're talking about pregnant moms, or we're talking about school kids, we need to be concerned about that level of stress on how the body's functioning at what it does to the body, what it does to the brain, what it does to that person in social interactions, their likelihood of engaging in substance use, their likelihood of graduating school or getting a job. We know that stress changes you, changes how you see the world, changes how you approach the world. And so we really need to be concerned about that. We know that we can't change everything, but can we help people, one, to heal after it's happened? And can we give families resources to decrease other sources of stress so that they can be more in tune with the family environment?
So I do want to talk about the difference between stress, kind of healthy stress, because there is healthy stress, versus toxic stress.
Correct.
So,
for example, when you invited me to do this podcast, and I'm driving here and I'm wondering what
2
am I
days
going to say?
ago.
Yeah, that's healthy stress. It motivates me to get up, to get out the door, and to drive. That's okay. We all need a little bit of stress in life to get up in the morning, to get on with our day. Otherwise, we'd probably be laying in bed for a longer period of time than what we should be. Stress can motivate you, can compel you to prepare for whether it's an exam as a student or an interview, or sports team. Something, not all stress is bad. It's where it becomes toxic that it can take its toll on the body. And just like not all stress is bad, I think it's important to acknowledge as well that not everything is trauma. Not everything is traumatic.
Yeah.
And, I've had students tell me that my grading is traumatic. No, you don't like it. It's stressful, but it's not going to make or break you at the end of the day. And I think that, trauma is a buzzword. And yes, we are very sensitive to trauma. We're very sensitive to adverse childhood experiences, which are potentially traumatic events. But not everything is trauma. And we can't move in that direction. But then the question might be, well, why are we talking about this? Why are we looking at it? Because the fact is in this community in particular, it is more prevalent. Adversity is more prevalent. But there's reasons for that. And this is not about pointing the finger. This is not about saying, oh, you messed up. It's about what can we do differently? What was that source of stress? How can we work together in community to make a better quality of life for everybody? And then when bad things do happen, you might be a little bit better able to manage that stress, to be more resilient. The fact is we're all resilient. We all experience bad things. We all experience stress. We don't all experience trauma, but it is very common. And many of us, we're changed by it. We are definitely changed by it. But most of us aren't stuck in it where we can't function. It's about striking that balance of recognizing adversity is common, trauma does happen. How can we support people to begin to heal from it? Because at the end of the day, we still have to be part of community. We still have to work. Yes, there's those exceptions. There's extenuating circumstances. But we know that kids go to school. Adults go to work. And so how do we create that sense of support where we don't feel isolated, where we feel, closed in on ourselves?
Right. And I think, too, from a community perspective, one of the things about adverse childhood experiences that we know is it doesn't just affect what you'd think, mental health, substance, suicidal ideations, those types of things. Adverse childhood experiences does affect high blood pressure, obesity, heart disease, cancer rates, all those types of things that you wouldn't normally associate with adverse childhood experiences. And from a community perspective, I think that is one of the things that we also have to focus on. So we also have to lay down supports within, those areas as well. And I think that is also one reason why SICHC is so important in other medical providers and mental health providers too, but within the community, because it is a community problem.
Well, and I think we need to approach people holistically. It's mind, body, spirit. It's not one or the other. It's we are a total package. And sometimes, we like to go to medication. I'm not saying medication isn't necessary because medication can be helpful, but what else can we be doing? If you expect to lose weight, and you're just exercising but not changing your diet, hmm, how effective are you going to be?
Right.
But if you're wanting to lose weight and you exercise and you're taking in better nutrition, then the likelihood of you being successful is going to be greater.
Right.
But the fact is all of this requires behavior change. Behavior change is not easy. I've had a membership to a gym probably for 9 years, and I've probably been to the gym less than 9 times in that period. And that's a story for another day.
Yeah.
I have the knowledge. I know that exercise is important. I know that diet is important, but so is motivation. So is support. And so, yes, there's a lot of resources in Orange County. SICHC is one of them. Team Peas, Team OC, Thrive, all of these things, they're part of the bigger picture. And they're part of addressing total wellness, whole health, and realizing that, yes, stress changes you, stress impacts your brain, stress affects your physical health, your mental health, but we can do something about it. And there's so many pieces to that puzzle and so many parts to the solution.
Well, and I think too that I think in kind of you're not living and breathing this like we are every day, it may not be as as aware, but it really takes just little things, little relationships, pairing up people with caring, stable people. It takes that small bit of something to support and to change. It isn't a grand shock and awe or you have to have this particular medication for sure. You have to have this particular type of therapy, or you have to have literally, sometimes it is the interaction, stable, healthy interactions with other people that combat and prevent, in some regard, adverse childhood experiences, and then also all of the things that happen as we're adults too. The adversity is in adulthood.
Yeah, and so that makes me think about what does it mean? What is community? And as I was driving here and I was thinking about community, I'd asked Siri, Siri, define what is community? And community can be people living within a given space. Community can be a sense of belonging. Community can be a bunch of organisms and systems working together. So there's different ways of defining community. And from my own research, especially around people with disabilities, is we know that so much of services over time have gone into community-based services. People need to be in the community. They belong in the community. But what we've realized is that just being in a community doesn't mean you're part of a community, that sense of belonging. And so I'm well aware that we've been talking about community. And yes, folks may say, well, I live in Orange County, I live in, Paoli or Orleans. But do they feel part of it?
Yeah.
Do they have a sense of purpose? Do they have a role in the community? Do they know people? Do they feel connected? Do they feel like they belong? Are they invited to do things? And so when we're talking about relationships and we're talking about community, it's not good enough that you live someplace in community. Right. It's about being part of it. And, making those connections so that, you can pick up the phone. You can text somebody like a couple days before a podcast and say, hey, I would like you to be part of. And knowing that you have a relationship to fall back on and that it's okay. And so in times of stress, do people feel connected and safe enough?
Yeah.
Feel safe enough, not necessarily just physically, but psychologically safe. Do they feel safe enough to reach out and to say, you know what, I'm having a rough time? Yeah. I had somebody reach out to me the other day via Facebook Messenger, and they said to me, have you ever felt like you didn't want to be around anymore? And I thought, well, this is pretty profound. And I thought to myself, okay, what is it that this person is needing? And this person was really needing a sense of connection. And they've known me for a number of years, and they felt it was okay to reach out and ask me that. That's not something you would generally ask a stranger. You know, you need to have somebody that you feel safe enough with to ask that. And what they're saying is, I'm having a hard time. Am I alone in this? And the answer is no, you're not alone in this. Many of us struggle or have struggled in silence. But then we get to that point in life where we feel okay sharing that experience. And so I messaged the person back a little bit and said, let's do something. What can you do differently? Don't be sitting at home. Get involved. And so they ended up going out and doing some stuff. But, if that relationship wasn't there, if that sense of safety
Right.
wasn't there, I don't know, would they still be struggling? That's not to say that the text or the message was an end all be all, but it opens the door.
Right.
And there are folks here in this community that I now communicate with because of events that I didn't before. And yes, I have some expertise, some skill set. Not an expert in everything. I'm not sure I'm an expert in anything, but
Right.
if I have the skills and the knowledge to share with somebody, and I have some rapport with them, then let me use that and let them ask. And I think that's what it's about. That's where this community comes into play is, do you feel like you belong? Do you feel like you have a sense of purpose? Do you feel okay asking people for help? Because there are tremendous resources, but not everybody knows what's available.
Yeah.
Ask. And hopefully, through all of this work that's being done in Orange County, that people feel a little bit more comfortable saying, I'm having a hard time. Or, can you help me? Or, I can help you. I think that's when you talk about the little things, it's that human connection, that relationship. It's not about being a scholar in adverse childhood experiences. It's not about being a medical provider at SICHC, although both of those things are quite nice. But when you pull them together and it trickles down into the community, it's about the change that we can make together.
And you're 100% right. And as you were talking, I was kind of trying to envision that in my head. And I think, too, an important thing to note is, yes, we're talking about community as this big whole kind of thing, this circle, right? But the reality is community is these little bitty circles within this big circle. So sometimes and I definitely see on social media and different platforms of this community is terrible, and not necessarily Orange County, but any other county. But and I think too, community is also what you make it. So I think that community, there are little sub communities that I think is important for people to find theirs, and figure out which group or which, we can have different groups, we can have different focuses, we can have different needs, and that in itself is our little group that helps us, and we're still a part of this bigger, larger community, and that's okay too. I don't know if it's like, you got to be with the cool kids or whatever. Is more of a two-way street of finding our group and then becoming a larger group within that.
There's a couple of things there in that conversation that I think need to be acknowledged, is that what you're talking about is differences.
Yeah.
And diversity. There is diversity in community. And how do we address that? Do we expect everybody to think, to live, to be, to exist, and to look just like us? Or is it okay that there's differences?
Right.
And then what do we do with those differences? Do we stigmatize them? Do we shame people? Do we say, oh, that's a terrible community? Do we make these big statements that are negative and close the doors? Or are we mindful of what we say? It's nobody's saying you have to believe in everything everybody else does. Nobody's saying that you have to accept or tolerate everything, because it doesn't work that way. There's got to be some rhyme and reason and some sense of order to community. But the fact is we're not all going to like each other. We're not all going to agree with what everybody does. That's okay. Because if we all did the same thing, you and I wouldn't be here today. It's because of our differences and our different skill sets that we've generated something new. And so, how do we approach people that are different, or the smaller groups? Maybe we don't belong to the bigger, sense of community, but are there smaller groups that we're part of? And what can we produce together? I think that's where the magic happens.
Yeah.
And there's been a lot of magic here. And maybe for an outsider, I live in Lawrence County, maybe it's easier for me to see, but there's been so much progress here because of these little groups and these little pockets making differences each day. And then when you pull it all together, it's amazing what's been done. And so, when we talk about little groups, so whether you're somebody with autism or somebody that's lost somebody to suicide, the fact is that these are part of the fabric, or the threads that are woven together in Orange County. And you might not know somebody's story. They might look a little different. They might show up to work a little sad or not as chipper as you would. You don't necessarily know their story. You don't have to know their story. But they're part of the community. And how do we come together to do what we need to do? And do we recognize differences in the smaller groups as divisions? Or do we pull them together and say these are really part of the recipe, if you will? Think about baking a cake or something. You put all these different ingredients together, and on their own, they're fine. They're great. But when you pull them together, you have something completely different, and something new. And so, that's one of the things that I think when you talked about social media, it is so easy to say something's terrible, or that community's bad, or somebody messed up. What do you have to gain by doing that? What you're doing is really creating more harm. And I'm not saying that everybody does everything perfectly, myself included. I make mistakes. I mess up. It's okay. Let's own it. But what do you hope to gain by putting somebody else in a position that's less than? The fact is we all have something to add. We might not be in the right time or the right place to add it, but, let's open doors rather than close them.
And I do think that that's one thing that Orange County's done really well, is to be able to find the opportunity to kind of walk through those doors together, even if those doors look like many colors and many shapes and many sizes. And I think that we have been able to do that. So I think that probably can certainly round up our second conversation about adverse childhood experiences and why is it important in communities. So again, I appreciate you being here. Wasn't too bad on a 2-day notice. You did really well.
I appreciate the opportunity.
And I'm going to drag you into something else later on.
That's fine.
And then if you drag me into your classroom again, I will be much better behaved this time.
You did fine.
But thank you so much for being here.
You're welcome. I appreciate it.
All right. There we go.
If the